past 9 months, forces loyal to Libyan warlord Khalifa Haftar have been trying to seize the capital, Tripoli. It's led to some of the most fierce fighting in the long-running civil war so far. Already more than 280 civilians, along with at least 2,000 fighters, have been killed. And finding a peaceful solution is proving difficult. Libya is divided. In the east is the Russian-backed militia leader Khalifa Haftar, while in the west is the United Nations recognized government of National Accord and Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj. On Monday, the warring sides met in Moscow to discuss a lasting ceasefire mediated by Turkey and Russia. But after hours of negotiations, only Sarraj signed the deal. And as Haftar walked away, President Erdogan sent him a stark warning.
We will not hesitate to teach a lesson to the putschist Haftar if he continues his attacks on the country's legitimate administration and our brothers in Libya.
So can the two sides find a way to peace? Let's ask our guests. In Tunis is Mohamed Eljarh. He's a Libyan affairs analyst and the founder of Libya Outlook. And in Lyon, France, we have Abdelkader Abderrahmane. He's a peace and security analyst specializing in North Africa. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. I want to go first to you, Mohamed. There was so much optimism around the ceasefire deal in Moscow. Why did Haftar walk away?
I think there was an exaggerated optimism. The move to Moscow or the call for a ceasefire was actually hasty. There was no planning or preparation whatsoever, and there has been no consultation with the concerned Libyan parties to ensure that all the terms and the details that deal with the ceasefire are at least agreed in principle. So this is why Khalifa Haftar felt that what Moscow and Ankara were offering was too much of a concession for him, and that it was unacceptable for him, given that he believes that he has a strong position on the ground now, and he wants to dictate some of his own terms when it comes to a ceasefire or when it comes to a political process in Libya.
Okay, and what would you say, Abdelkader? Would you agree with this point that there was exaggerated optimism and that Khalifa Haftar now has a strong position on the ground and that's why he walked away?
Yes, I do. I do agree with that. I think there was too much optimism. And then we mustn't forget that Haftar went to Moscow under pressure from Abu Dhabi, which was itself lobbied by Moscow. So I think that he went there, but knowing that there would not be much hope for signing anything. So yes, I do agree with that. And he does believe that he's in the better position on the ground.
Okay, so you say he went under pressure from Moscow. And my question to you, Mohamed, then what has this done with Khalifa Haftar's relationship with President Putin? Clearly, one of his big backers. Has he embarrassed Putin?
This will not be the first time that Khalifa Haftar has embarrassed some of his backers. He embarrassed President Sisi and the Egyptian diplomacy on a number of occasions. He also embarrassed Abu Dhabi on 1 or 2 occasions, and he embarrassed President Macron of France as well on occasions. Khalifa Haftar has been quite effective in diversifying his external support. He does not rely on one actor, in contrast to the GNA that relies completely on Turkey and on Erdogan's support. But Khalifa Haftar has the Egyptians, the French, and the Emiratis, and also the Russians more recently. But it's important to make a distinction. The Russian support for Khalifa Haftar is not as strong as some would like us to believe. No, the Egyptians and the Emiratis and the French are actually providing much more robust support. They have much more belief in Khalifa Haftar than the Russians do. The Russians have always been hesitant to give Khalifa Haftar full support for his project or his war in Libya. They still have issues with regards to his links to the United States and the fact that he lived in the United States for 20 plus years and his links to the CIA, etc. So the Russians have been quite careful. Khalifa Haftar does not consider the Russian support to be strong enough for him to make the concessions that they were asking from him. In addition to that, if Khalifa Haftar gave Putin what he wanted on the first occasion, I guess his other foreign backers in Cairo or Abu Dhabi or Paris will be quite upset, and he could lose their support. But I think Khalifa Haftar thought that he has enough space to maneuver and to reject this deal, given that he sees that it was asking for more concessions than he is willing to give.
Abdelkader, I don't know if you agree there with Mohamed, but what do you think were the sticking points for Khalifa Haftar?
I think that Haftar, I do agree with with Mohamed. Haftar is someone who is really unpredictable, and he does believe that he's in a better position and he should not be dictated anything from Russia or Al-Sisi or Abu Dhabi. So at the end, he does believe that the time is playing in his favor rather than in favor of al-Sarraj. So that's why I think that he walked out yesterday from Moscow without signing any peace agreement. And he, just as he did in the past with Macron or El-Sisi.
Okay.
So I think that Haftar, yeah.
I just want to bring in our third guest who joins us now and is Guma el Gamaty. I want to ask you the following. Can you trust Khalifa Haftar, given what we have seen on Monday, walking away from Moscow without signing that potential ceasefire deal?
Well, before I answer whether we can trust him or not, and you can ask many Libyans whether Haftar can be trusted or not, let me just clarify a couple of points which I've heard your guests have alluded to, which I think inaccurate. Number one, the deal in Moscow which was going to be signed is only a ceasefire agreement. It was not a peace agreement. It was a ceasefire agreement that we all seen the draft. It talks about mechanisms about how to maintain a ceasefire and how to monitor it. That's all. And another fact, which I am absolutely sure about from sources, reliable sources, is that the draft of this agreement was given to the parties 2 days before they have arrived in Moscow. So Haftar and Mr. Sarraj had plenty of time to look at it, read it, and think about it and consider it. To say that Haftar has been surprised about it is nonsense. The fact is that Haftar is not his own man. He does not make his own decisions. He has masters who control him, who use him as a proxy and a spearhead. These masters are multiple. The main one is Abu Dhabi, the Emiratis. The second one is the Egyptian regime. And then he has the French and he has the Russians. This time, the Russians wanted him to sign, but the Emiratis did not want him to sign. The Emirati charge d'affaires in Moscow was actually present with the Haftar delegation all the time. He was dictating to him to the extent that the Russians were annoyed about that. So that is the reality. Now, I can tell you another very important thing.
Mohamed, before you do tell me...
The reason why Haftar did not want to sign,
okay.
not really did not want...
Continue.
Sorry.
I want to hear this reason.
Go. Can I just finish my point, please?
Go ahead.
Can I finish my point? Yes, we are told, and we believe from the, various sources that the reason Haftar was told mainly by the Emiratis not to sign is because they said to him, if you sign a document with the GNA, that is basically, essentially a recognition of the GNA as the legitimate government of Libya, which Haftar does not do, because Haftar is waging a war against the GNA, and he wants to topple it through military means. And the second thing is they told him that if you sign this agreement, you are agreeing to the Turkish government and Turkey being part of the monitoring mechanism to the ceasefire. So in other words, you, Haftar, are legitimizing the presence of Turkey and Libya, and indirectly are giving legitimacy to the military agreement or the security memorandum of understanding, which was signed by the GNA and Turkey. These issues are the real issues which made the Emiratis tell Haftar not to sign. Probably Haftar was never even aware of the political implications of these things, which are not in the document, but there are implications if he signed the document.
Mohamed Eljarh, your response, please, to Guma.
So very quick points on the Emiratis were actually lobbying Khalifa Haftar for the Russians. So they were actually convincing and working to help the Russians to convince Khalifa Haftar to actually make it to Moscow. So I think there is a contradiction between the information or the sources, what sources are telling Mr. Guma el Gamaty and what sources are telling me. So that is one point. The other point with regards to the sticking point for Khalifa Haftar, the sticking points are the following. As soon as Erdogan and Putin made in the press conference this surprise announcement about a ceasefire in a press conference in Istanbul, Khalifa Haftar was very quick to issue a statement and to make it very clear that he will not, I mean, he is willing to have a ceasefire, but he will not stop the fight against terrorist groups, he will not stop the fight against militias, and he will not stop the fight against Syrian mercenaries that have been arriving in Libya with the help, to support the GNA with the help of Turkey. So Khalifa Haftar is trying to dictate terms in this regard because he believes militarily he is strong enough on the ground and that he is still able to dictate some of these terms. The other sticking point for Khalifa Haftar and his delegation was the attempt to divide the House of Representatives or to officially institutionalize the already existing division of the House of Representatives.
Mohamed Eljarh, we've run out of time.